You have Alex Pardo on today. He is a self-storage magnate. He did an incredible job in the wholesale fix and flip world, and then he tells his story of transitioning into self-storage. So if you are interested in this at all, or if you're currently in the real estate world and you're wondering how the heck can I get into that? Does it take a lot of my time, energy, effort? Then he also talks about profit first and how that's helped him over the years from wholesaling and then going into self-storage. So this is something you want to hear. He also talks about the emotional journey of how Profit First has helped him in his personal life and what they're doing in their personal finances and how it got him and his wife on the same page. So if you want to hear those stories and you want to know, can I, as a real estate investor, also add self-storage? And is that something that would even be a possibility? Well, if you're stuck on your rat race, then that wheel and just going round and round, you want to listen to this one. Enjoy the episode. Alex, welcome back to the podcast, man. Thanks for being on.
David, always a pleasure connecting with you, my friend. So selfishly, I'm pumped to be here just because I get to talk to you, but I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. And I love your wall behind you. If you can't see it, if you're only listening to this, he's got some Monopoly type things, obviously really good books behind him as well, too. So I do love that setup. So you win a 10 out of 10 for the background.
Well, thank you, but I grew up playing Monopoly. It's funny, nobody in my family wants to play Monopoly with me because they say, you always monopolize everything. I'm like, well, that's the whole objective and point of the game. So I can never find anybody to play with.
Oh, man. So we need to go and have a Monopoly tournament or something because that's what I hear from my family, too. Because, no one wants to play that. Yeah. Oh, man. We do have Bluey Monopoly, though, because I have an 8-year-old. So that one's way faster, and she'll actually pay attention for 20 minutes.
Nice. I love it.
That gets my little fix in, but just with Bluey characters. But
very cool.
Good stuff. So you have been honestly an influence in me over the years too, because you were one of the first people when I was going down the Profit First road that you said you liked it, you'd been implementing it. So we'll talk about that and go down that road. But then too, just your journey and that you've stuck around for all these years. You and I now been through several, I feel ups and downs, and seen other people through it and that you're still through it. So I'd like to know, okay, you've implemented Profit First in your companies and you've tweaked it to your business and all of that. Tell me about that journey. When did you first get introduced to it, and how did things start to shift when you first got introduced to Profit First?
Yeah, great question, David. So Trevor Mock, who I believe is a mutual friend of ours, he's had a big impact and influence on my life. He recommended the Pumpkin Plan to me by Mike Michalowicz many, many years ago. And I remember when I read that book, I was like, I love this concept. And that led me to other Mike Michalowicz books, one of which was Profit First. And so I said, well, if Pumpkin Plan is a really good book, this has to be a pretty good book. Nobody really recommended it to me. I just picked it up and I read it. And right when I read it, it's one of those books I put down, David, that I'm like, how have I not known about this? And why have I not implemented this in my business? Because, dude, before I used to do exactly what he talks about, basically checking account balancing. How much money do I have in there? Okay, I can spend money on this. I can't spend money on this. I can do a distribution. I can't do a distribution. And so really what that book did for me was just give me a very simple, basic framework. Now, initially, I remember having a little bit of resistance in terms of finding a bank that would allow me to create all the necessary accounts.
Yeah.
And it took a little bit to get up and running. But one of the things I've realized from implementing frameworks and systems, whether it's Profit First or EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System from Gino Wickman in the book Traction, is that they provide the roadmap, the blueprint. But at the end of the day, the system has to work for you. You don't work for the system. And I don't know if you would agree or disagree with that. I'd be curious your thoughts. But for me, I find that whenever you read something like a Profit First and it resonates with you, the concept makes sense, implement it the way they teach it and give yourself some grace to be able to tweak and modify it to work for you and your business if you find that it's just too rigid or it's too challenging because of one reason or the other. So that's kind of what I've done, man.
Yeah, and I would agree, as long as you have the core principles in place. But then the worst part is when you try to set it up, then you don't follow it, whether it is Profit First or EOS or any type of system like that. It's you have to, put it into where you'll actually do. When people say, oh, I've got to set up all these bank accounts, I'm like, just start with one. The core principle is the getting that good habits in place with money. So then since you've had Profit First in these types of systems, I now I'm curious on the EOS side too. So maybe we'll go there.
Okay.
But on the profit first side, if you've been running it for a few years, have you seen where profit first has either helped you like in a cash crunch, or it's helped you cover some things, or have you done anything cool with profit first, like with the profit that you have in the company? So I'm very curious.
Yeah, there's several things that come to mind. Like so I own a facility with a partner in Amelia Island, which is just north of Jacksonville, really affluent area, just great location. It's a deal we found on seller financing, and we set up the profit first system. Now, when we bought that facility, we anticipated, David, that we were going to probably have to spend about $100,000 to $150,000 in what we call in commercial CapEx, capital expenditures, basically repairs. And so right away we set up, our income account, right? And then the OpEx account. How we tweaked it is we set up a CapEx account because we didn't have the 150 right out of the gate. And so we basically just started saving for it. And every time money would come into our serving platter, which is our income account, we would just take a certain percentage. And we were aggressive at first.
Yeah.
And we were trying to shovel as much money into that CapEx. And then when we had enough of money to feel comfortable, like embarking on that journey, hiring a GC and starting the project, because we had a healthy CapEx budget and account, we were able to take on that project. Prior to implementing Profit First, we've owned that facility almost 3 years. I probably still wouldn't have started the budget, or still would have started the CapEx project. And even worse, had I started it, I might have put myself in a really tight financial spot because I didn't allocate the proper funds to having that. And I think what Profit First, for me anyways, I can't speak for you or anybody else, I think what it's allowed me to do is it's given me clarity. It's given me peace of mind, knowing that, money comes into our income account, and then based on our projections, based on our goals, based on certain projects, we can tweak and allocate certain percentages to the different accounts. And it just gives me flexibility as an operator to be able to run the business, not ever having to worry like, oh, are we going to have enough money for this? Are we putting ourselves in a very tight or precarious position because we're underfunded in this particular area? And by the way, I don't claim to have everything figured out with Profit First.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm sure you could take a look at my situation for 10 minutes and probably say, Alex, do this, do that, do this. Having said that, I think what it's done is given me peace of mind and clarity.
Yeah, no, I love hearing that too. Well, I think there was even like a hidden gem there where you said you went into a new project like that's, facility. And since you had that mindset, you like went into it with that, like with the Profit First setup. Sounds like your partner was on board too. And like knowing that, which is great. It's great. Yeah. Got a partner that's on board with the systems for that. And then you were able to see like, okay, I've done this in the past. I want clarity on this project. So it kind of like you were borrowing from the past experience, to make sure that Profit First going forward was going to serve you for this project, which I love what you said. It sounds like it helped you actually do the CapEx when you were supposed to, not just when like, oh shoot, we got to either start this and then, blowing everything up or blowing your cash position out of the water, or just like putting yourself in a more precarious situation like you mentioned.
Yeah,
so
for sure. By the way, man, I follow the system so much that like my wife and I have incorporated Profit First into how we do our personal finances.
That's awesome.
Now, so instead of a CapEx budget, like we like to travel, so we have a vacation budget.
Cool.
Right? We have a Christmas and gift giving and holidays, charity, things like that. So every single month, we just have a certain fixed, like we don't really use percentages in our personal finances. We have like a certain amount that we know we budget. So we know Christmas is coming every single year and we're going to be giving gifts to our kids and other people. And so it's like in the past, when we first got married, we would like come August, September, start buying stuff and not really having a budget. And then we sat down and we said, why don't we just implement Profit First? And let's just figure out, hey, what's the amount of money? What's our budget for gift giving or for vacations or for whatever? And say, hey, let's just divide it out over the year and we'll just have dedicated accounts for these things. And so when I look back to how we previously used to run our finances, was basically just one account that everything would go into, everything would go out of. Brother, it starts to give me a headache. I'm like, how did we even manage that?
Yeah. So how long ago did you do that in the personal finances?
Man, it's been years. It's probably been 2017, 18.
Oh, wow.
Around there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the book came out a few years before that too. So it's like, Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing stuff like that because what you did was take the principles. Like you just took the principles and you put it into your personal life. And like you said now, like how were we managing this before? Because I've heard a lot of people that if they go down the profit first road in their business, then they do it in their personal life, which it's almost like reverse engineering, like the personal finance space, right? Like if I could get my business under control, like I need to do this in my personal life too. So I love what you did there, and that's awesome. It sounds like for your marriage that it helped just get on the same page with money too, like divvying up, this is what we're going to do. So do you see that like being more on the same page?
Yeah, man, 100%. Like, fortunately for me, my wife and I, when we first got married, and we made the mistake of not having a really in-depth, detailed conversation about how we wanted to manage our finances.
Yeah.
Fortunately for us, like we were able to figure it out pretty quickly. But I have a lot of friends, and by the way, if you're listening or watching, and this is you, like I say this with zero judgment. Like everybody, kind of operates and runs and has their setup the way that they feel comfortable. But for us, we were on the same page that like I don't need to have my own accounts. I'm talking personal, not business.
Yeah.
She doesn't have her own accounts. Like we're one, like everything flows through. And for us, that has given us just, again, a lot of peace, clarity, transparency. Right. And because if I had my own accounts and she had her own accounts and I was running profit first, but she was running something else, I'm not saying you can't make it work. I know people do. It wasn't the path that we chose.
Yeah. Sounds like you chose a better path for you guys. Like this is what worked for both of you to come together to do this, to be able to then run it. And it sounds like you're on the same page. It's like what you said, that transparency, like being transparent with each other. And, it's like that big word, right? Communication. Like it helps with the communication side. Or like
communication tends to be a good thing for any relationship, especially marriages. So I know I'm not breaking any ground here, but obviously a lot of relationships, whether it's personal or business, suffer because I think when you go into relationships, there has to be expectations that are discussed up front. A mentor of mine, David, told me years ago, like if you're willing to have an uncomfortable or somewhat awkward conversation before the relationship really gets going, you can avoid a really, really uncomfortable and awkward conversation in the future. And that's really served me, just being super transparent with my wife, with business partners, with coaching clients, anybody I work with. And that doesn't eliminate all problems, but I think it eliminates or drastically reduces most.
Yeah, that is really, really good. Because a lot of people just suffer and they suffer needlessly when they could have had courage up front. Like, here's what we need to talk about. Well, and sometimes too, they don't know. Like, your eyes were open. It sounds like once you read the pumpkin plan, you read profit first. And that's why I really appreciate you coming on and telling about your story. Because some people don't even know this is out there. And they're like, where the heck was this?
Yeah, that's how I felt when I finished reading the book. Yeah, man.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So that's awesome. And I really appreciate you doing that. Now saying that with profit first, because I love when people actually implement it and they actually, follow it for what is good for their business. Yeah. That helps me respect them as an owner as well, too. Like you care about the financial end and like you want to button up the back end. So tell us now, you've been in real estate for a long time. You've wholesaled lots of houses. You've done a lot of that. Now you're in the self-storage space and like doing that for the last what is it, 5 years now?
Almost 5 years.
5 years. That's crazy. So I've known you probably for almost that whole entire time, maybe even a little bit longer. And so, a little bit longer than that. So now tell us about the self-storage. Like, do you mind me asking, going from like the residential and the wholesale and that type of side, what made you jump into self-storage?
Yeah. Man, that's a great question. By the way, I'm an open book, brother. So literally anything you want to ask me, I'm happy to share, the scars that I've developed over the years from hard lessons learned and wins and everything in between. But
let me scratch out all these other questions I had then and let me get the real ones that just did.
There you go. So no, man, for me, it's ironic, brother, because I got into real estate, like I'm sure many people watching and listening, because really, it wasn't so much about the money. It's what the money could do for you, right? Yeah. It's just options, right? Living a certain way, freedom. And ironically, I ended up playing the wrong game. I discovered many, many years later. So I think wholesaling is great. Fix and flip can be awesome. If you're viewing it as a cash generator, the challenge for me is that I wasn't taking that hard-earned active income and putting it into cash flowing, producing assets. I ended up playing the rat race game within my business of chasing deal after deal after deal, and have been fortunate to do very, very well throughout the years. And, 700 plus wholesale deals later, I started telling my wife, I'm like, I don't know that I want to keep doing this.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a grind. And yes, it provides for us. And again, fortunately we do well, but it's like, it just felt like I was like climbing a mud mountain, if that makes sense. Like I would climb up and then I would slip back down and climb up and slip back down. And I said, we got to start buying assets. So I shifted the focus after I joined the high level mastermind back in late 2017. And I saw everybody in this community, like, using the word scale and throwing it around very irresponsibly, by the way. And I don't pass that as a judgment. It was me that I fell into that path of like, well, if that guy can do 10, 12, 15 deals a month and have a team and increased overhead and this, I can do that. And so I started doing that. And around the same time, while I was trying to quote unquote scale my wholesaling business, I started buying rental properties, thinking that was going to be my path to freedom. Except I didn't factor in, well, there's still tenants and toilets, and I still have to manage these assets. And eventually I got a third-party management company. I still had to manage them. It just felt like there was a better way for me. And so I started coaching somebody. I ran a mastermind along with a friend of mine at that time. And I was coaching somebody who owned a storage facility. And it really opened my eyes to that asset class and the fact that he had everything I was looking for. He had time freedom. He had financial freedom. He didn't have high overhead. He didn't have high volume business. He didn't have any employees, but yet he was generating a nice cash flow from one or two facilities. And he didn't have a lot of the pain points I was currently going through. So I just started to research that asset class. And when COVID came, in fact, the year prior, 2019, I decided I'm going to start to wind down this beast of a business that I felt I had created. I felt I had to feed. So for perspective, David, our overhead was 45 grand a month, which to some people listening, that's nothing. That's a week's payroll, right? For others, that's crazy. For me, that meant I had to wholesale 2 deals just to break even. And that's not why I got in this business.
Right.
I had the office, I had the implementer and the COO and all this. And I'm like, I want to simplify, right? Like I had scaled irresponsibly. I just added. And I wasn't growing the right way. By the way, had I not had Profit First implemented, it would have been a complete train wreck. Even though we were making money.
Yeah.
Right? So, man, COVID came and it was just an accelerator. It was a blessing in disguise. I said, you want to know what? I asked myself one important question. I said, if I'm still running this wholesaling business 12 months from now, how would I feel? And I almost got that feeling in my gut like I did when I worked in corporate finance and it was Sunday evening and I had to go into the job the next day. But except this was much worse because it was the business I had built and created. And I'm like, something has to change. So, man, I've always been a ready, fire, aim type of guy. My biggest thing at that point was my team, was creating a soft landing for them, making sure that they were going to be okay. So in about 4 to 6 months, I had ended up just winding down the business, shutting it down. And it was later that year in 2020 that I transitioned into self-storage.
Okay. Wow. That is a roller coaster. So now looking back though.
Yeah.
Do you wish you wouldn't have because of the craziness that ensued during COVID and right after COVID?
I have had quite a few friends locally here because obviously real estate exploded, right? Post-COVID. And I have friends that would make nothing and then were killing it all of a sudden.
Okay.
And every now and then I ask them, they ask me dude, do you regret it? And honestly, I don't. I know I quote unquote left a lot of money on the table, but I also would have sacrificed a lot of peace. And for me, it wasn't worth it. I knew that wasn't the business I wanted to be in long term. Now, having said that, even though I don't regret it, knowing what I know now, I think one of the things that holds people back from getting involved in storage are limiting beliefs. They're either intimidated because it's a bigger asset class, or they think they need to have a bunch of money to buy these deals. For me, I didn't realize that the skill sets that I had acquired as a single family wholesaler, as an investor, were going to translate over into storage. I incorrectly assumed I was going to have to develop a whole new set of skills and basically start from zero. And knowing what I know now, I could have built a bridge. I could have scaled down the wholesaling business. I could have still done some deals here and there while I was building my wholesaling or my storage business. So I don't regret it. And I probably could have done things a little differently back then when I was making the transition.
Yeah.
But brother, God doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
So the path that he took me down was the path I was supposed to go down. So I don't know if that answers your question,
Oh,
but
yeah. Well, I think it was a very mature answer of no, I don't regret it because I would have stolen more peace and the money's not worth it. That's what I really heard there. And that's really good. I think another thing that you touched on that I think I need to beat into if you're listening to this, to like beat over your head, something he said there. He said he asked himself a very important question. And to me, that was like the turning point. You ask yourself, do I want to be here like 12 months from now or like doing this thing or like what do I and it's asking those deep, hard questions, and you took time to think. And it's like, that's what I think is separates you than most other entrepreneurs and business owners. Like you actually asked yourself some of the tough questions and made the pivots. Like you actually went into it and then you don't regret, going down that road. So now that we've gotten through that, what about now in self-storage? Like, how has that journey gone since you started? Like, do you own a bunch of assets now? Are you into like now? Are you teaching people? Like, tell me about like that journey since then.
yeah. Yeah, I want to tie it back to something you mentioned, and I appreciate you reflecting on what I shared because I don't even know that the undercurrent of what I was saying is I think it's really important that you have awareness about yourself, the gifts and God-given talents
Yeah.
that you've received. And I've been somebody who I've invested in myself a lot from a personal development perspective. I do my best to try to spend time in the Word every morning and just reflect and just and I think because I've gone down that path, it's allowed me to ask myself important questions. And so I've always kind of attached myself to this framework of playing the movie forward, right? Like
Yeah.
if I was sitting down in a movie theater and I had already seen the movie and I knew what was coming, would I make the same decision or different decisions? And I think that can be a helpful mindset and framework for people listening, regardless of what business you're in or if you're in a 9 to 5 looking to get into real estate. And so, yeah, man, look, the journey has been fun. I've learned a ton. I was able to sell. I had acquired a storage portfolio in Mississippi of about 800 and actually, no, I'm sorry, 638 units, which I just finished selling at the end of the year.
Oh wow.
And so fortunately did very, very well on that. I own a facility in Florida. I'm part owner on 2 more. I have a coaching client closing on 1, ironically, tomorrow.
Nice.
But because of that awareness, because of the personal development work I've done, and this might surprise a lot of people, I am not passionate about real estate or even storage. I like it. I'm good at it, but I view it for what it's intended to be. For me, it's a vehicle that God gave me to be able to do the work that I think is most meaningful, which in my case is coaching. Like I've taken Trevor Mock, who I
Yeah.
referenced earlier, he talks about this energy audit. And the energy audit is taking inventory and stock of the things that give you energy and also taking stock and inventory of the things that drain you from energy. Well, this conversation with you, like this is energy giving to me.
Yeah.
Doing checking emails or researching logistics, like that drains me from energy. So every day I ask myself, what can I do to get closer to the things that give me energy versus the things that drain me? And coaching and working with people and knowing that I'm having a positive impact in their life, that's energy giving.
Yeah.
And so I've essentially just married the two, right? And I've been fortunate to have been in the coaching space since 2013. Now I'm just applying, what I've learned as a coach to get the most out of people, and just I'm doing it now with storage.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, man, it's like this is an asset class where, when I was in wholesaling, it was a volume game. I had to do a bunch of deals every single month. This is different. I look for 1, 2, maybe 3 good deals a year. And it doesn't take that many for it to have a significant impact on somebody's life, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
That is cool. So then who would be a good person to get into self-storage? Like, is it someone that's coming from a W-2 and they want to jump in? Or is it like if they're a real estate investor, or like what type of people
Yeah.
would you say that you like to see that jump into?
And I didn't thank you for the alley-oop because I literally did not, we didn't talk about this and I didn't feed you this, but you just nailed it. It's because of the space in the world I've been in. Many single family real estate investors come to me to learn how to buy their first facility. And there's about 35% of the people in our community have an active job. But now this is their side hustle.
Okay.
Right. So it's a mix of both. It's either real estate investors and or employees. But at the end of the day, they all want the same thing.
Yeah.
They want more cash flow. They want to build wealth. And ultimately, they just want more options. They want more time freedom. And I think that's what this asset class can do for people.
So that one guy that like introduced you to it, where he only, he had a couple of storage facilities or one, and he wasn't doing it. He didn't have nearly as much overhead or people or
Yeah.
whatnot to get into it. Have you seen that for yourself as you've gone into it and now done it and have done multiple facilities? Did you see that as like it is low overhead, it is a lot less, things like that? What, the management
Absolutely.
versus wholesale?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think what I didn't know and that I went into it naively back then was that, storage, it's an operator's business, right? So it's a business that if you're good at operations, or if you partner with, whether it be a third party management company or somebody who's good at operations, you're going to thrive. Like anything, location matters. So you got to make sure that you're buying a storage facility in a market that is undersupplied, meaning there's more demand for storage than there is supply.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it was 838 units across 3 storage facilities last year prior to me selling that Mississippi portfolio. Brother, if I told you I spent an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours a week on that portfolio, it was probably a lot. Now, I want to be fair.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what it took to acquire and get those. I spent significant time and energy to find, right? But once you get these properties, you start to increase the occupancy and what we call stabilizing them. It can be I won't use the word passive. It can be semi-passive, right?
Yeah.
Couple hours a week and you're in a good place.
So when you just said that, when you coach someone, are you focusing then more on the acquisitions part? Because it sounds like if they can get it up and running, you can give them maybe some tools to like keep it running and on autopilot.
It's an A to Z process, but think of someone's journey into storage in 3 phases. Phase 1 is spent on marketing, lead generation, understanding how to evaluate the opportunity, making offers, basically everything needed to be done to go under contract. Then phase 2 is like the structuring of the deal, the financing, going through due diligence, all the way through closing. Phase 3 is now ownership, operating. How do you increase the value of the facility, that what we call the net operating income? We break it down in 3 phases and we focus on all 3. But to your point, David, the first 3 to 6 months is pretty much focused on phase 1.
Okay, phase 1, because it sounds like phase 1 and phase 2 are basically even before you purchase it. It's the analyzing everything, getting the deals at the door, and then actually analyze. Once you've got one that's on the hook, analyzing to make sure that it's an actual deal and not just something like, oh yeah, we gotta accept the offer, but is this any good? So
no, 100%. Anybody can go, believe it or not, anybody can go buy a facility. You got to buy the right one. You got to understand what you're buying, and like that's what we go in depth into. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. And I like what you said too, the underserved and like the ones where there's not a bunch of supply. Because I'm in Florida. I feel like there's a storage unit facility on every corner, almost like in some of these places that I'm driving around. So that's got to be one of the biggest pieces, because especially in a depressed market, I would think that storage doesn't do as well, right? Or does it do better in a depressed market? Like, what's your opinion on that?
I have a very strong opinion. In fact, so much so that I lived it. So my very first deal was in a rough part of Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi. And knowing what I know now, would I have bought that facility? I'm not somebody that lives with regret. Fortunately, we sold it and did very, very well. But the demographics we look for, like medium household income over $50,000 a year, that market was under $30,000 a year. It was in a rough part of town, what we would consider a D area.
Yeah.
Now, man, I learned early in my real estate journey, David, and you know this, that you make your money when you buy. You just realize it when you sell. Thank God I bought the deal right, because when I got into that deal, I dealt with break-ins, I dealt with higher delinquencies, I dealt with more management headaches than what I had anticipated going in. And the reason I dealt with that was because I was in a rough market, right? So whether it's storage, single family, or anything else, again, the number one rule of real estate, right? Location. You got to buy it right. Again, fortunately, it was a good deal. It didn't fit my vision of what I was looking for. And I've now used that experience moving forward to build my portfolio, and then obviously to coach others as well.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
And this one's more around the economy. What about if the economy is up or down? What do you see storage? Like, does it do better when the economy's up or down? Or like, is it pretty stable through that? Because real estate, you've got cycles in that, but like, is storage different? I've guessed
Yeah.
the real estate
So
cycles.
it's interesting that you asked that question. By the way, brother, like I want to give you your flowers. I've been on a lot of podcasts and I'm grateful for each opportunity, but like you ask amazing questions and just love your energy and flow as a host, man. So I want to recognize you for that.
Appreciate it.
One of the things that really appealed to me when I started looking at storage back in 2019 was the first time I really started to look at it, was that I kept seeing the words recession resistant.
Okay.
It's not recession proof. It's not the alcohol and tobacco industry. It's not gambling,
Yeah.
but recession resistant, meaning that historically speaking, if you look at when the economy is down or when the economy is up, storage was pretty stable. In fact, for many, many years, even like through COVID, obviously everything exploded in COVID, storage was doing this. Now, the last couple years, I think we're in the new market, which is not what we experienced during COVID.
Yeah.
I think that's a healthy thing. That's a correction. Like COVID wasn't realistic and that wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
Right. But no, historically speaking, and you can fact check me if you do your research, storage has been very resistant to tough markets. And when you think about why, it's a very sticky product. What happens when the economy like contracts? Well, people start to like contract themselves.
Yep.
Oftentimes people downsize, but Americans like to consume and they like to acquire things.
Still have their stuff.
They have their stuff. So what do? They end up getting storage and paying $50 to $350 a month
versus moving or something.
Versus moving. And it's a nuisance expense. For many people, $50 to $350 a month, it might sting them, but it's not enough where the pain of disconnect is high. And so they keep paying it month over month. And as an operator, I love that.
So, okay. I know I said one more question, but it got me sparked here and then we'll be done.
Yeah.
What about vacancy versus like a portfolio of properties? I feel like since you have less overhead and it's an operator's game and you don't have to have a ton of people at the facility, depending on how big it is, of course, but like, I feel like your occupancy, you want it obviously as high as possible, but even in a market where you might have more vacancy, you probably, depending on the loan and the terms and the debt, can probably tolerate more of a vacancy. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's something called the debt service coverage ratio, which basically means for like every dollar of debt, how much revenue is coming in. So banks like to see a 1.25. So if I have a dollar of debt, they want to see that I'm making $1.25 back, right? So the DSCR is the ratio that if you were to go get a bank loan, generally speaking, they're going to want to see 1.25 or higher. But yeah, look, that facility, when we bought that facility, it was like 54% occupancy. And from day one, not only was it covering the monthly debt service, but we were putting a little bit of money into our pocket after all the expenses.
54%, yeah.
And that's at 54%.
With the portfolio of properties, I don't think you're going to be putting money in your pocket.
Yeah. Like and by the way, we're, not to get into a conversation about operating expense ratios, but I incorrectly assumed that whenever I was going to graduate from single family, it was going to be multifamily. Well, one of the cool things about storage is the operating expense ratio is usually between 30 and 40%. So what does that mean? If a facility generates $100,000 in revenue annual, like for a year, then it's going to take me $30,000 to $40,000 to operate that facility. If you compare that to multifamily is like 45 to 55%.
Exactly.
So what does that mean? The margin is just there, and you have more breathing room, more errors can happen. Like you have a higher profit margin, which
sounds like more forgivability, like the storage facility. This is awesome. No, I hope this does. Like, if you're listening to this should get you excited. Like, follow Alex, go and, he has where he trains people on this too. Do you want to give the link? Like, how do people get a hold of you if they want to get into the storage space?
Yeah, brother. Appreciate that, man. So storagewins.com, WINS, for anybody interested in learning more about how they can get involved in the storage business. And I put on a lot of content every single week on my YouTube channel, my podcast. So I'm happy anything I can do for people, even if they're not interested and they're just curious, happy to send you free resources and training because it is a cool asset class and it's something that people can do part-time. It's not something you need to devote, 30, 40 hours a week to. So you can keep the focus on what you're currently doing and just learn something that can provide more stability for you from a cash flow perspective and allow you to build wealth long-term.
Yeah, no, and I love that, where you can still keep your main thing the main thing, but add this in, especially if you're on that wholesale grind like you were talking about, the rat race. Like, you need to start getting out of that. If you're using profit first like Alex was too, it's like, then you could have some of that money to be able to go into the, the storage facilities and those type of things, which sounds a lot better than just buying a single family rental portfolio and like going down, or even multifamily at this point. Like, you've convinced me.
Yeah.
So this is where I like this stuff a lot. And obviously Alex follows profit first. So he's not just going to teach you how to make it. Like, he's got the principles of keeping it too, and at least pointing you that direction. So it was storagewins.com. Go there, get at least grab his stuff. And go and follow him and go follow his stuff there. If you're interested, going to storagewins.com. Thank you so much for being on, Alex. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate all the knowledge that you shared here, where people, it seems a very doable, and going out there and starting it in the self-storage. And thanks for talking about profit first as well too, and your journey on that.
Yeah, no, man. Again, thank you for having, man. Fun conversations. Always great connecting with you. And by the way, man, love to see how when we first met, how you came in and you had this vision, and then where you are today and how many people's lives you've impacted and changed through your principles and applying profit first to real estate investing. And so just love what you're doing, brother. Love what you're doing.
Thank you. I did not ask him to say that, but that's a great segue into the end here, that if you are on that rat race and you're just living deal to deal, you're wholesaling and you're flipping or whatever, and you're wanting to get out of that, and you're like, I'm just struggling here, we can make sure we can help you keep more of what you're making at simplecfo.com. You can go see if we're a good fit for that, because if you're making the money, we can help you keep it, because that's a discipline that you need in your business no matter what. So thank you for listening as well too. And then again, thanks so much, Alex, for coming back on.
All right, Dave. Appreciate you, man.
This episode of the Profit First for REI podcast is over, but there are plenty more where that came from. Are you ready to learn how David and his team can help implement the Profit First system in your business? Schedule a discovery call at simplecfo.com right now. We'll see you next time on the Profit First for REI podcast with David Richter.